Welcome to the Matt Phillips Podcast. I am Matt Phillips, your sales leadership coach, mental toughness expert, and founder of Matt Phillips Coaching. We help sales managers and leaders make more money, save time, and become kick-ass leaders of their sales teams. And that's what we're here to talk about on this podcast. We are here to give you the tools and tactics to build a well-oiled sales machine and teach you the mental toughness skills so you can show up confident, focused, emotionally in control, and ready to energize your team. It's time to talk sales leadership and mental toughness. Let's get into today's episode. It is podcast time, and it is Matt, and I am ready and excited to be with you today because I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about my backstory. You know, oftentimes when I meet people, and if we haven't met, I hope we get to someday, because I love hearing people's stories. Like, tell me about your path that has led you to where you're at today. And it is fascinating when you start just peeling back the layers of people's just lives and their careers. And it's so interesting to me because you find out these amazing stories of, like, you know, just adversity they've overcome and opportunities they've taken a hold of. And it's just awesome. So today I thought I'd share a little story about me, about how I got to this point, because the reality is I've had this company, Matt Phillips Coaching, over 10 years, almost 11 years, which is absolutely amazing to think about and a little bit crazy to think about too, that it's been that long. Like, time flies, as they say. But I'll tell you a little bit about my path, and I'm going to skip over some parts that you may have heard already. I think a lot of you know, I was born in the Denver, Colorado area. That's where I currently reside. And I went off and played collegiate baseball, and then I played professional baseball. But I'll pick up a little bit after that, and starting with how I got into the business world and my background there. So after baseball in college was done, I was one of those kids who, I was a business major in school, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, to be completely honest. And so I was getting my business degree, and then lo and behold, what ended up being my first employer showed up to the campus at Creighton University, and there was a shortage, like a supply chain issue. No, I'm kidding, not supply chain, but a shortage, supply issue of accounting majors at that point. And I was not an accounting major, but there was a shortage. So Ernst & Young came up with this plan to send non-accounting majors to either the University of Notre Dame or the University of Virginia to get their master's, and they pay for the whole thing. And I'm like, yes, I will interview for that, and I will take advantage of that. So I ended up interviewing, somehow got the job, and Ernst & Young sent me to the University of Virginia to get my master's of accountancy. So I always joke in different speeches and stuff of, like, kind of nerd alert over here. Like, I like my numbers to a point, but if you want to geek out on accounting, I'll stay right with you there. So actually moved to Kansas City, Missouri to begin my career. Again, born and raised in Denver, but the Kansas City office came to Creighton. And so I ended up in Kansas City, Missouri. And lo and behold, that move changed my life in a variety of different ways, which I'll share with you in a bit. But moved to Kansas City. I'm going to school at the same time at UVA. Ended up graduating about a year and a half later after starting my career. But in Kansas City, why it changed my life, number one, I met my wife. And we got married after, a year and a half of dating. And I'll get into the kind of second part of it, but you never know who you're going to meet based on where you move and where you live. So thankful that my wife also moved to Kansas City to student teach, and our paths crossed, because now we're 19 plus years later with 3 children and just an amazing relationship. So that was Kansas City. So one thing that I've always been passionate about is kind of experiencing life in Europe in particular. And they have a different approach over in Europe. And so when I started at the firm, because I'd played baseball over in Europe, I kind of let it be known first day I walked in that, at some point, if the opportunity arises, I would love to move with the firm overseas. And so about 2 years and 4 months? Yeah, 2 years, 4 months. I know this is exact. There's a reason for this. 2 years and 4 months into my time, I actually got a call from a colleague of mine in the New York office. He said, "Hey, they need people in Zurich, Switzerland." And so I went to my partner and said, "Hey, I heard this opportunity opened up. What do you think? That's something I really want to do." Well, basically 7 months to the day of when I got that call, from my friend and colleague in the New York office, I was standing in Zurich, Switzerland, picking out our flat and deciding how to get all of our stuff over to Switzerland. And I'm so thankful. I think there's so many opportunities at companies to take advantage of. And I was all about seeking out the opportunities and capturing those. So my wife and I got married 2 weeks before we moved to Zurich, and we ended up spending 3 years there. And our oldest daughter was born over there, and just have amazing travel stories that I don't have enough time on today's episode to talk to you about. But so worked in Zurich for quite a while. My clients over there, I had two main clients. One was UBS. It's one of the biggest banks in the world. And then Syngenta, which is a massive agrochemical company. And I worked on the treasury audit, all the derivatives and hedging, stuff like that. So I've got a pretty big financial services background myself. And then after those 3 years in Zurich, Switzerland, because we had a child, we moved back to the United States and lived in Omaha, Nebraska for a couple of years, then back to Denver, where I worked and consulted for numerous Fortune 500 companies and everything from accounting, digital operations, transformation, and business development before starting Matt Phillips Coaching 10 plus years ago. And I wanted to share with you just a little story about that, of how I made this transition, because, going from accounting and operations and business development, right, in the corporate world, climbing the corporate ladder, because that's what I wanted to do. All of a sudden, this massive shift to go start my own business and get into leadership coaching. Like, how the heck did that happen? And I was working for this, short story is working for this Fortune 500 company. And, something that I was always passionate about was leadership development and, pushing myself. I think it's just the athlete in me. And so if any of these companies offered a leadership class, I was first to sign up. I mean, I was sitting not in front, but I was sitting kind of in the middle of the room, right? I didn't want to seem too excited about that leadership class. So I remember one class in particular that I was sitting in, and I looked up at the instructor at one point, and I'm watching her teach. And her name's Naomi, actually. I know her. I have reached out to her. I actually just talked to her the other day, and I told her this story. I remember watching her up there, and I had this thought pop in my head, and it was this: why can't I do that? It was a simple thought. Why can't I do that? Because she looked like she was having fun. She was getting to do something she was passionate about. I was passionate about it. And it was that moment that started me down this path of figuring out what I wanted to do next. And the reality is, even though I was working for great companies and great people and, oh my gosh, great experiences, I have no regrets from any of my time. I knew it was time to move on to something different. That moment was the catalyst, which has led me to where I'm at today. And so I started researching how to even do that. And funny enough, I didn't even talk to Naomi after that. I should have asked her, how'd you get into this and how do you do it? But I didn't. But I did have a plan. And all I did was start asking people that I knew if they knew any keynote speakers. Did they know any people who ran workshops? Did they know anybody who ran leadership development companies? And lo and behold, people did. And so I would start writing, inviting them to coffees and taking them out to lunch and just asking question after question after question about how they did it and how they built it and all this stuff, until I finally got up the nerve to pull the trigger and start this business. You know how sometimes you jump off the cliff and sometimes you're shoved off the cliff? Have you ever heard that phrase before? In this case, I was a little bit shoved off the cliff, in that the company I was working for at the time, they went through a restructuring, and I was given a severance package and a moving package and a choice, right? Do I move to this new city, or do I leave the company and take my severance package? And at that moment, I was shoved off the cliff because I decided to take the severance package and begin Matt Phillips Leadership Coaching. So that's a little bit about kind of my background, how I got to this point. And, maybe one of these days I'll record an episode of, what's happened over the past 10 years, because when I look at where I was versus where I'm at today, we're so fortunate to get to work with amazing companies in a variety of different industries. We work with sales teams a ton. We work with other leadership teams as well in different functions. And the evolution of that day one, when I made that decision, to where we're at 10 plus years later, is unbelievable. But it just shows me and proves to me time and time again of like when we step out, when we take chances, good things tend to happen. When we have this focus on just not giving up and keeping going, when others want to give up, you start to separate yourself slowly over time. And I saw that in the corporate world, in accounting, I saw it in finance, I saw it in operations, I saw it in business development, and I still see it in the business that I run today. So that's a little bit about me. Like I said, when we meet next, I hope to get to know you and more about your story. And again, maybe another episode's coming about what's happened, Matt, over the past 10 plus years in your business, which has led to this point. So I hope you enjoyed that little backstory. If you have some athletes or some salespeople or some corporate leaders, or frankly, just anyone in your life who needs to hear that and wants to hear a little bit of the story to maybe inspire them and show them what's possible, please share this episode because I'm here to help however I can. So as always, please subscribe, please share, please tell people about what we're up to. So thankful that you've taken your time with me today. See you on the next episode. Thanks. Thank you for joining us today on the Matt Phillips Podcast. If you are like us, we know that you are here to do great things, to become the sales leader that makes things happen and drives big time sales results. We know you have that big vision, and we are here to help get you where you want to go. We're here to help you develop that unstoppable, rock solid leadership skill set and help you train to master the one true differentiator, mental toughness. We would love to be part of your journey. So if you are ready, head over to mattphillipscoaching.com and check out the ways that we can help. As always, please share this episode and make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below. Thank you again. And now, go crush the day.